If you get that music before the rehearsal, guess what? They expect you to know it at the rehearsal. Rehearsal's not the place where you come in and you learn your songs. Rehearsal's the place where you come in and you sort out any issues that may arise whenever the band gets together and plays. We're not like, Steven, could you take 2 minutes and learn that part? No. But can you read that chart? No. Yeah, you should be able to read it. If you take the gig, be able to read that chart. You should have looked at it well ahead of time. Well, what is going on? Welcome back to the Drum Show podcast. This is a podcast that is strictly from questions I get from you, questions I get from my online students, and it's all about helping to sort through those. You know, how do we deal with those? How do we get past some of the issues that we see? And how do we move forward with our drumming? So I want to talk about this one near and dear to my heart. A lot of these topics are near and dear to my heart. And that is prepping for your first live gig. Or maybe this isn't your first one. Maybe you just have noticed I'm not too great at getting ready for these gigs. Now, this could be like you're playing at your local community center. This could be you go to a weekly jam at a club. This could be you're getting together with practice for a few other musicians. This could be you got your band's first gig. This could be your first paying gig. You got hired, like whatever that looks like for you. You could be playing at church. How do we get ready for this occasion, whether that be a rehearsal, that be an actual place where you're playing in front of people for pay or not for pay? Okay, I remember a lesson I had with my first long-term drum teacher, and I had played, when I was 15, I played percussion for this Christmas stage show, and then by the time I was 16, I was getting referred in to do some drum set gigs. And so my very first paying drum set gig, my drum teacher, unbeknownst to me at the time, my drum teacher couldn't do it, and he said, I think Steve's ready for it. He always called me Steve. And so I got hired to play a stage show. I think it was it wasn't for Hattiesburg. It could have been for Hattiesburg High School, or it may have been HCLO. I forget. Laurel Little Theater. I used to do a bunch of stage shows around that area in Mississippi. And it was Little Shop of Horrors. I can still, feed me, Seymour. I still remember a lot of the music. So I got referred into this gig by my drum teacher. If you want to start gigging, drum teachers are a great place to start. Other musicians are a great place to start. A drum teacher sees you and how you're progressing. They will refer you into a gig before they'll refer a lot of other people. A, they love to see you succeed if they're a good teacher. And B, they know like, hey, this person shows up every week and does the work. We're very concerned with that subs are coming in and doing the job. I want to hire a sub that does as good or better job than me. I'm not concerned about job security. Look, I'm going to do my best job. If you want me on the gig, then that's great. But I want my sub reflects me as well. And so when I get someone to sub a gig, I don't want to get a second tier player. I want to get somebody that thinks top shelf, right? So I came in, I said, hey, I got this gig. He said, that's awesome. He didn't tell me, oh yeah, I got that for you. He said, that's awesome. And I said, I should have, I came in and I said, here, this is the book. This is the music. He's like, man, this is a gift. If you get this far above before the first rehearsal and you're able to look through it, you've got to go in knowing this. You go into that rehearsal knowing this. And I said, well, I have a recording too. And he said, man, this is really a gift. Like, you need to understand this is a present. When you get this much information before the first rehearsal, I mean, he was really excited about it. He said, you have to dig in, you have to learn this stuff. And he was right. So he taught me how to prep for my rehearsal for the gig, right? Most of us would be like, oh, there's a rehearsal, I'll look at it when No. If you get that music before the rehearsal, guess what? They expect you to know it at the rehearsal. Rehearsal's not the place where you come in and you learn your songs. Rehearsal's the place where you come in and you sort out any issues that may arise whenever the band gets together and plays. We're sorting out cues, we're sorting out count-offs, tempos. Hey, you guys play this unison section. Hey, what's going on there with the chords? That's what we're sorting out. We're not like, Steven, could you take 2 minutes and learn that part? No. Can you read that, chart? No. Yeah, you should be able to read it. If you take the gig, be able to read that chart, You should have looked at it well ahead of time. So how we get ready for these situations is we get all the information we're able to get. And then we go over it until we are so sick of it. Okay? And it doesn't have to happen. We all oftentimes think we have to be here at this drum set, not this one, but your drum set, to practice. That's where practice happens, is at the drum set. And there's a lot of practice that can happen outside of your actual practice space. As a matter of fact, it makes the actual practice time on your drum set much, much more beneficial if you have prepared outside of your practice time. But how do we do that? Okay, so what I'm going to be doing is, and I take all these factors into consideration. How much time do I have ahead of this rehearsal or this gig? How much information do I have? Do I have the charts? Do I have the songs? Do I have sample recordings? Do I have a board tape, which would be like obviously we don't use tape anymore, but they still call it that. That's a recording of the live performance. If you go to a Broadway show and you have to sub for them, they do the same performance every night. They're going to give you a board mix. They're going to send you a board tape of what they've been doing and the charts with the drummer's notes, and you have all the information you need. You should be able to go in there and nail that. And oftentimes you'll go sit one or two shows and kind of ghost behind them, be the kid that goes to work with the parent, right? And you'll sit and make notes of your own of what's happening. But if we can get this type of information, the more information you can have, the better job you're going to be able to do. But it's not just okay to have that information, and it's not just okay to go over that information once or twice. We have to go in knowing that information. I got a gig a little over a year ago doing some work back in Mississippi with some cats I used to work with way back in the day. And I was excited because it'd been a long time since I worked with them, and that's a funny thing. It's not like this was in front of 80,000 people, it was going to be a fun gig with an orchestra in front. And it was doing a Queen tribute. I've talked about this maybe once or twice on the podcast before, but we were doing it with a full orchestra. One of my mentors, he's like a father to me, had done all the arrangements for it. So I was excited for that, and I knew all these Queen songs, like Fat Bottom Girls. I've been playing that in bars for years. Another One Bites the Dust. Come on, We Are the Champions. Come on, I like all of these. Under Pressure. I knew most of the songs going in, and I still sat for an inordinate amount of time with these charts. Poured over them, made notes, looked at the recordings that they had uploaded to Google Drive. I wanted to make sure I had everything down so that when I went to the rehearsal, I knew the originals. I knew what they were expecting on this chart because there were some cuts and some medleys and things like that. Knew what parts they were wanting me to play, where they had changed the tempos, where there was going to be cues for singers. I went in with my own notes already made. I went ahead and even the stuff that we don't really think about, So for this one, they had old school charts. Now you can scan these into an iPad or some type of digital device, which is fine. I'll do that. I have a love-hate relationship with playing with an iPad. Part of that is probably because I didn't come up with it. My generation is the first generation. We had an analog childhood and a digital high school, college experience. So I came up learning, from actual sheet music paper. It's not that I don't like technology. It's just that, honestly, if I can open a score that's 5 pages long and I've taped it together properly, like if I can open that and I don't have to click and maybe make the wrong click, or it's a small screen so I can't see as well as I need to, like if I don't have to do all of that and I can just, there it is, there's my sheet music. Well, I'm great with that, then I don't have to touch the sheet music the whole time. So I went through with this particular one, they sent charts and I just went ahead and printed those. I taped them up how I needed to because I knew we were going to be moving fast and I didn't want to have to deal with an iPad in that situation. And so anyway, I went ahead and did all of the prep work for this gig. The thing that I do that I think a lot of people miss, and the thing that I think most professional players do, if you're a professional player not doing this will up your game tremendously, is the amount of time I spend listening to the music I'm going to be playing is kind of ridiculous, borderline obsessive sometimes. The amount of music I'm trying to consume to make sure I'm familiar with what's going on out there, to make sure I'm familiar with what's happened before. I still dig into old school funk. I still dig into old school metal, old school punk, old school, grunge, rock, doo-wop, Latin, reggae. Like I'm trying to understand and add to my knowledge as a musician so that I have that to pull from. But as well, if I know I'm coming up on a gig Well before I ever sit down at the drum set, I start listening. When I'm mowing the grass, when I'm riding in the car, when I'm, shopping in the grocery store, when I'm at the gym, I'm listening to these songs. And what I do is I will oftentimes do a preliminary listen for which songs are going to give me problems and which aren't. And the ones that are going to give me problems, they get moved to the front. So they've got an arrangement that's a little bit tougher. They're an odder time signature. The parts are a little bit harder. Those are getting moved to the top. And the rest, I'll move down to this is a ballad. Yeah, I need to listen to it, but it's not as pertinent as some of the others. And so I prioritize my listening. And then I don't listen through the whole set list. This is counterproductive. I take 2 or 3 songs at a time and listen through to them over and over and over. Oftentimes I'll take one song. If I've got 2 or 3, I'll probably listen to them 3 or 4 times in a row before I'll call that a complete listen. So 3 or 4 times number 1, 3 or 4 times number 2, 3 or 4 times number 3, and then that's one listen of all of those to me. And I'm trying to listen to different things. What's the bass guitar doing? What's the guitar doing? How is my part interacting with that? We're out here. What's the overall song form? A lot of times I'll have a listen through just for song form. Okay, the intro is 4 measures, first verse is 12 measures, chorus is 8, and then we go back to the intro, but it's half an intro, so it's only 2 measures, and then we're back to, and so I'm trying to get a mental mind map of what's going on. The next thing I'll do before I move on from those songs is I will make a quickie chart, and I give a lot of lessons to my students on how to make a shorthand or quickie chart. I don't have any, usually I have 1 or 2 just laying around. And that's basically the form of the song. I kind of have a way to do it. If you're a student of mine, you can go to the quick tips section, and it's in the How to Chart a Song in One Listen, Part 1 and Part 2. And then for those that came to camps this past year, this has started to be a presentation. I do it almost every camp, and we do it together. I make everybody get a sheet of paper. I'm like, come on, we're doing this. If you want to do it digital, you can, but a sheet of paper, at least we can do it, see it in front of us, keep it, throw it away, make modifications. And I just kind of show my way of doing that. If you want a done-for-you shorthand system, there's a couple great books on the Nashville number system, and you can modify that for drummers because we don't necessarily have to know chordal structures, whereas a guitar player, piano player, bass player, they're going to need to know the specific chords and notes. This podcast is brought to you by the Drum Better Daily program. That's actually my online drum school that I've run now for 12 plus years. Not only have I been playing the drums professionally since the age of 15, I've been teaching since the age of 18. Matter of fact, I talked to one of my first student a few days ago. I actually called him to see if he could sub a gig out for me. Daniel, love you, man. And he's still playing. He's still doing it on a pro level. I would love to have you go check it out at stevensdrumshed.com. You can find a link to that in the show notes or video description, whichever platform you're watching it on. But it truly is a community of like-minded drummers where we are striving to just be the best that we can be at the drums. In addition to over 70 pre-recorded drum courses, there's also a tech talk area where we talk about everything technology related as it pertains to the drums, e-kits, recording, doing videos, all of that stuff. There are forums where you can hang out with the other students as well. We do 2 live video student calls every week that you can join if you'd like to. We do guest artist calls monthly, and I'll even make you a personalized lesson plan if that's what you need. Yes, we talk about the nuts and bolts of drumming. Yes, I give you exercises, but we also talk a lot about how to practice more efficiently, how to practice better, and how to get more out of your practice time. I know you're just like me. You're busy, you're being pulled by work, by family, by friends, by other responsibilities. Whenever you practice, you really want to see gains and have it be productive. That is what we focus on in the Drum Better Daily program. I'll have to say personally, it's been really cool because some of these students I've worked with for over 12 years, we started running drum camps last year in 2022, and I got to meet some of them in person for the first time. Those drum camps have been selling out. They've been just blowing my mind with how much fun they are and how great a time it is to bring the community together in person. A community that was started online and has been going online strong now for over 12 years. I'd love to have you be a part of it. And so that's the second thing I'm going to do. After I'm listening, I'm going to go through and I'm going to physically write down what's going on. If I have a chart, I'm not just going to be like, okay, I got the chart. No, I sit down and I do a listen at a table just with the chart. A lot of times I'll do it over lunch or coffee or something, and I'll do a couple songs a day. And usually, like, let's say they give me the music, we're doing, say we're doing 20 songs, and I've got 2 weeks to learn them. Okay, cool. I'm going to divide those up into 2 songs a day for 10 days. You're like, yeah, but you got 2 weeks. Yeah, I need time for review. I want time for review. So I'm going to leave 4 days for just review, 3 or 4 days where I'm just reviewing all of it and running the set. And so how that looks is day 1, I'm trying to, if I can get day 1, I'm trying to, already have those songs listened to. So maybe I have 3 days at the end. Day 1 is listening to the first set of 3 songs, 2 songs. We're doing 2 a day. Listen to those first 2 songs. Then day 2, I'm working on those 2 songs, and I start listening to the next 2 songs. So day 1 is just listening, making notes on a chart. Day 2, I'm performing and working out any parts and playing in my practice time those 2 songs. But I'm listening to the next 2 songs and making notes in a chart about those. Day 3, I'm working on song 3 and 4 that I was listening to the day before, and now I'm listening to song 5 and 6. And I'm working on songs 3 and 4 in my practice time, reviewing songs 1 and 2. You see how this process, and as I go, I start, and every day I'm not going to be able to review every song. So usually I'm putting in review every other day, the songs I'm going to review, or I'm going to be earmarking those that are troublesome to me, those that I feel I need to spend some more time on. There will be a few that you're like, this is the song I've got to spend some time on. And so by doing this and going about this in a very organized way, we are able to tackle all this information, and then we get to the last 3 or 4 days, and we have those for just review, troubleshooting, extra listening, extra charting. You're like, Stephen, that's a lot of work. Yeah, I mean, welcome to it. This is my job. I take it very seriously. And if I get asked to do a gig at, like I'm playing at my church in a couple of weeks, that does not pay. I will do the same thing. And I get frustrated when the songs are not up there a couple days in advance. Why? I want to listen to them. I want to make notes. A couple years ago, I still play at my church pretty regularly, and I don't get paid to do that. I just do it. There was a rehearsal coming up. I said, oh man, they haven't had the songs up, So I just didn't check the night before or the morning of, because I'm like, look, there's obviously nothing. It's probably just going to be stuff we already know. And I kind of lapsed. And right before I'm supposed to leave for rehearsal, like half an hour, I'm listening through them. And I get to this song, it's playing. I'm like, oh wow, okay, so this song's a deal. This is a long one. So then I'm like, oh, I've got to make a whole actual chart for this. So now I'm charting a song, kind of sweating bullets because I got 15 minutes till I need to leave. And you get to the ending, and the ending is in like 5 or 7, and there's a huge ton of unison hits where the drums fill those spaces. It's kind of, like this gospel high church type of thing just for fun. And I'm like, oh, crap. Then I'm cramming and kicking myself because I knew better. I should have checked it earlier that day. Okay, so when I let this system lapse, I don't do as well as I want to. I went in, I did fine, but it wasn't what I wanted to do, right? And there was a lot more stress than needed to be in that situation. So we need to plan for the unexpected. And we do that by, when we get this information, we are able to process it and go through it. I used to do the same thing with my lessons in college. You'd have a lesson on Monday, wouldn't have a lesson until the next Monday. So that's Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday, Friday, Saturday, Sunday, and then Monday, right? So we get out of the lesson. I would already start working on that new material that day and getting familiar with it. And then I would spend 3 days trying to work through all the material they'd given me. I was in college for music, so I had a lot of time to practice. And in those first 3 or 4 days, I would get that material done. Then I'd spend 2 or 3 days focusing on application of the material. What can I do with this material? So oftentimes I would go into my lesson with other exercises I had developed from these different types of exercises, and just to show what I could do. And I always like to leave 1 day for review. That may have been the morning of, or that may have been the day before, but I always like to have that review time of going into my lesson, so that the lesson could be a success. You're not going to get what you want out of those lessons if you don't prepare for them. If you're paying for them, that's a gig. Come on. It's an even more important gig. You paid for it. You're getting paid for it. You paid for it. So you want to make sure that you're prepared for that. And likewise, if you're going into a teacher paying them, you want to make sure they're prepared for you. You want to make sure that they have the next steps, and you don't walk in and they're like, well, what do you want to do today? No. Don't ask me that if I come in too. If I come in, the only time that that's different is if they're first meeting you, or let's say when people come to a drum camp. Oftentimes, they're first meeting me. I haven't met them. I don't know where their playing is, especially if it's the first day of camp and we've got a lesson. So I'm like, hey, I get like, these are your goals for the week. And so I've already looked through that. But a lot of times I'm trying to get a feel for where are we, and very quickly, where can we go from there? But if I've met them before, they've come to another camp, I've seen them play for 2 or 3 days. When they come in, I have hey, I've been seeing this in your playing. Is this a problem? Okay, let's work on that. And then we're off to the races, with a couple preliminary questions. So we need to plan for success. Success doesn't just happen. We really do need to plan for success with these gigs. And the way that happens is a lot of listening, a lot of looking over the charts, charting the songs, working on it, a lot of organizing your notes if you're going to need them at the gig, and not getting there and having them falling everywhere, or having them in 18 different places on your digital device. You got to have a game plan for that. Because when you get to the gig, there's going to be a whole other set of issues that you're dealing with. Setting up your drum kit, dealing with other musicians, like and. You have to be prepared for those. So the music has to be an afterthought at that point. The music has to already be, yeah, I know that. And to give you a good example of this, the gig I'm on right now at Steel Woods, been with them, we're coming up on 1.5 years. And my first gig with them, we were playing, I think we were opening for the Marshall Tucker Band. And get there, I'd had no rehearsal with this band. I'd been working on the music, learned it, had a couple cheat sheets. Mostly it was memorized. They handed me an iPad walking up to sound check and said, here, you're going to need to run all this. And I'm like, okay. And so now I'm looking through the iPad going, oh, okay, what is this? What's the program? How they got it situated? How am I going to transition? All these things. Then I get up there. It's the only gig I have not been able to use my drum kit on. It's the only gig I've ever shared a drum kit with another drummer while playing with this group. And it was my first gig. The drummer used vastly different sizes than I had picked for this gig because of our sound. Vastly different size cymbals than I had picked, very small. And he was significant. There was a significant height difference between the two of us. And they said, hey, do you mind using his kit? And I'm like, I'm the new guy, so I don't want to. I'm like, sure. Sure. So I'm getting up. I'm literally sitting on the floor. The hi-hat has been cut off, so I can't raise it anymore because it's been cut off to accommodate for a shorter player. And so I'm like, okay, well, I guess this is just how I'm going, And they turned around and they said, after the sound check, they said, everything good? And I'm like, does it matter, At that point, if I had gone in not prepared with the music, if I'd gone in having not understood and listened to that music and done my homework, that would have been a disaster. And I wouldn't have gotten the gig. But I wouldn't have gotten the gig not because I wasn't a good enough player. I wouldn't have gotten the gig because I didn't prepare. And the ancillary issues, the secondhand issues on the gig would have taken me out. Using somebody else's thing, working this iPad, trying to and the pacing of the show, they would have taken me out. Because I didn't know my set going in. There's too much information I didn't know. So it would behoove you to do your work beforehand and really, take this seriously. Ever since I started playing, I take it very seriously that people would take their time and come hear me play anything. And so I want to respect that, and I want them to hear the best version of me. That's not always going to happen, but I really do want to try for that. Now, this has gotten easier over the years because you start to notice patterns and chord changes and forms of songs, and you add to your repertoire. And so oftentimes I'll get a gig now, and I'll know over half the set if it's a cover gig. It's like, yeah, I'll brush up on those songs, but I'm good on those, and these are the 15 I need to work on. These 40 are okay, these 15 I'll work on. And that's how I approach gigs. This will make it a much less stressful event for you, and it will make it much more successful. So if you ever have any, hey, this worked for me, that I would love to hear from you. help@stevensdrumshed.com. You can drop me an email as well. If you need some help with your drumming, I would love to help you. We've got the Drum Better Daily program. That's my online drum school. It's a ton of students and a ton of drummers that are just trying to be a better version of themselves, myself included. And so I'd love to meet you on a live call. We do a couple weekly live calls. I'm about to do one here in just a few minutes. And I'd love to meet you on those. There's some calls on this podcast, actually, that you can go listen to. And as well, we have in-person drum camps. The registration's only been open for a couple weeks, and I do expect those to sell out. We are over half sold out at this point. We may even be 3/4 sold out. So go check those out and get your name in there if you want to come to one. If there's a wait list, don't be afraid to put yourself on the wait list because we actually utilized that this past year. But whatever you do, go practice, and I'll see you in the next episode.